In just the last couple of weeks, there have been multiple contradictory reports about AI's impact on jobs. You've had Stanford on one hand and Harvard claim that AI is impacting entry-level jobs and it has actually taken those jobs away. But on the other hand, you have economists and you have a think tank saying, no, that's not really the case. You then have McKinsey saying that 80% of the companies who've put some AI investment have not really seen the value come through on the bottom line and on their employees. So what is really happening? Hello everyone, my name is Shujat Ahmed. I worked behind the scenes in tech for years, myth busting for executives on everything around talent, culture, and the future of work. I'm going to help myth bust this confusion and then move beyond that to see what can we do to assess where the actual risk is, and then what can individuals do about this. By way of introduction, this is the first video on this channel. I have a podcast on this channel that I do once a month with my co-host. This video series is the one where I'm talking to you directly, is one I plan to do weekly, and my goal is to myth bust for those who are going to get left behind by companies in this AI era and help them with insights so that they can lead without blinders and use the insights to start thinking about building a career and designing a career so that they can stay relevant in the future work that is going to be driven by AI. And hope that we can drive a more human future of work that's focused on, yes, AI readiness helps you get relevance, but it's focused on you to build that human connection and design a more purposeful life. So with that, let's go. So before we jump into this, I think let's do a primer for ourselves on both a framework and terms that will help us clarify not just on the reports I showed today, but for you to be able to read reports as you see spread around on social media. And also, there's a framework I've used, whether it was looking at back when I was working on business strategy, around disruption in business. And then when I looked at talent strategy as well, before the pandemic, during the pandemic, after the pandemic, when AI was coming in, it's been handful in almost every situation. And I've evolved this over the years. So when you're faced with disruption and you want to navigate uncertainty in the face of that, there are three questions that you need to ask yourself. The three questions are: should I, could I, would I? Now, should I is based on the beliefs I have about the way the world is and the way I'm operating in that world. Are those beliefs still valid? And should I act? Right. So in this case, what is AI's impact on jobs? What is happening in the job market, right? And even if AI does not have an impact right away, what is the perception, the halo effect being created that it is going to force leaders to make the wrong decisions? Should I do something about this? And once you know that, you then want to look at, okay, where is this headed? What can I do in the present? And where is this future headed? What would I need to do? And what is going to be my role and value add in this new world, right? And then the third is would I? You can know what's happening in disruption. You can know, okay, what is the impact on you and what is your new role in this new world. But, strategy is about making choices. And strategy is about saying yes to something and no to another. Strategy is about, picking an identity and saying, this is who I want to be and this is who I do not want to be. So you can know the should I, you can know the could I. The would I is really important because you want to figure out, is this what I want to be in this future? And is this for me or not? So that is very critical as well. What I am going to do in the series of videos, and I'm planning to be around 4 videos around this umbrella of should I, could I, would I. This video is going to dive deeper on the should I, and then I'm going to run another one, maybe 1 or 2 on could I, and then on would I, just so that we can get into the depth of this. And as we build this, please leave comments behind if you want me to go into more details on some of these areas. I'm happy to do that. So for should I, what do you look at? You look at where is the job market right now? And we know the market is tight, but on the underlying reasons, where is AI playing into this? And what are the signals that we see about where AI is going to play in the future? And how quickly are we getting there? So we are going to jump into that. For that, we do need to understand a few terms. These are terms that you may have heard before, but they're worth refreshing. You may have heard this about automation and augmentation in the discussion around AI. So automation is tasks that are repetitive, that are based on rules. Think of that are standard that you could give to AI right now. Remember, we have the worst of the AI right now. This is not the best AI that we're going to have. But in the current moment, what can those tasks be taken over by AI and can be fully automated? And then you have augmentation where AI can't do all the tasks for the work, the outcome that you need to achieve, but you can use AI for some of these and it helps you amplify. And that is what is called as augmentation. Now, to make better sense for myself, what I do is normally I look at it a three-part spectrum, which you see on the screen. I look at, if you're using AI for informing yourself, right? I think a lot of people are using ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity just to get some basic information, and then they, get their work done. I call that you're using AI that's informed. And then, but if you're using more for deeper reasons where AI is actually acting as sort of like an analyst or a team member for you, where you're using it to get done some ideation, some analysis, and then you put your judgment onto it, that is, AI assist. And then the other extreme is where AI just does that whole set of tasks for you. You don't have to intervene. You have to review, but you don't have to intervene in the decision for it. That's the do part. What you will hear as a term is AI exposure, that there are low AI exposure roles, there are high AI exposure roles. What people mean by that is basically they've looked at tasks in a certain job. Every job is a collection of a lot of tasks. But for the primary tasks involved in that job, if a lot of those tasks lie on the automation side of the spectrum, is going to be a high AI exposure role. But I would say that even if it's like, just taking as a heuristic, that if like 40 to 50% of a job, the tasks can be automated, that means that job has changed, right? That's something that HR uses as a number, legal uses as a number as well, because that just means there's a significant impact on the role. Some may be more even aggressive and say, even if 30% of it is changed, is a significant impact. But let's say 40 to 50% to be safe. And for exposure, for example, 50% automated, and I would say even 15% automated or just semi-automated, where it's like you're doing a lot of AI for assistance. Remember, this is the worst of the AI. That means quickly we can get into in the future where the role evolves or new roles get created because so much of it is being done by AI that whole domain now requires a completely new role to happen. So we'll get into it. But AI exposure is another term. Now, based on that, let's get into these fun reports. All right, first up, this is the report from Stanford, from researchers at Stanford. Again, Stanford here. It is called, very, artfully worded, Canaries in the Coal Mine. 6 facts about the recent employment effects of artificial intelligence. So what this report and the researchers did is they looked at high AI exposure roles. And what they found was that the early career workers, so especially like in early 20s to late 20s, they've had the biggest impact. They've lost their jobs, especially those who are in high AI exposed occupations, compared to others who are in less exposed fields. And then similarly, they found that those who are senior in the workforce, even if they were in high AI exposed roles, were still okay with it. They again remember I talked about AI exposure. They use a similar methodology. The AI exposure is generally this Anthropic index, which Anthropic is a company that owns Claude. Claude is one of the chat tools that a lot of people use. And that has sort of classified based on the usage of Claude and then for what tasks people have used. They have built this terminology around AI exposure for tasks. And if you really want to get into it, there's a table in this report, and you can see for different references, different ways, methodologies people have used around augmentation, automation, what is least exposed, what is most exposed, right? So what they've found, number one finding, is that employment for young workers has declined in AI exposed occupations. Now, again, they've looked at the time period from 2022 to 2025. In there, they have looked at, for example, software developers, AI exposed role. They looked at in those for 2022 to 2025. They found that for the headcount over time, this is the blue line, which is people in their early 20s, and then this orange is in the late 20s. It has been a significant decline compared to other age groups, right? Then they've looked at customer service, similar. And you look at marketing and sales, similarly. However, for like first and production supervisors, or you look at health aides where the classification doesn't make it too high AI exposure. You don't see that impact. You don't see that kind of a trend. Secondly, what they found is that even as employment grows in areas, for young people, it has been stagnant. So it means that, they are losing roles, and they're not, and where there is potential for growth, they're not really growing. So companies are not really looking for young talent. And then they make this thing, right? They say that entry level employment has declined in applications of AI that automate work, but they don't see that impact necessarily for augmentation. It means that the roles being taken away are the ones where AI is completely taking over all those roles, and where there could have been high augmentation, it's not. Now, this is where I smell this is fishy. Here's why. So I'll start with mine and then I'll share some data. I think there are three things in play. Prior to 2022, we had this long bullish run of a market with zero interest rate. Remember also that in the pandemic after 2020, between 2020 and 2022, we also had that hockey stick growth. And the market was crazy, unprecedented growth, right? And there was a lot of money to throw away because things were at zero interest rate. But as things started to slow down, as the interest rate was changing as well, already companies were planning that there are macroeconomic sort of headwinds. However, the shareholders are saying, I got to experience such a great growth rate. If I'm going to invest in you as a company, you need to give me this ongoing. And then you have executives as well. They have to protect their pay packages as well. So there was already signals that there is going to be cost cutting and shrinkage in companies based on the way the macroeconomic situation is happening. You start seeing in 2022, Sundar Pichai, Google CEO, start signaling messages about productivity publicly. And then you had other CEOs start talking about it. So you already had these messages long before ChatGPT about productivity and how remote work is maybe the culprit, and maybe people have become lazy, and maybe then it was about everyone's become lazy, and then everyone needs to buckle up. And then along came AI. And then AI is now this scapegoat. Companies were already in the process because of macroeconomic uncertainty, and then also to protect their margins. They were already in the process of cost cutting, and then that led to mass layoffs. Now, as those layoffs happened, there was a lot of experienced people, because a lot of the experienced people were expensive talent, or in the marketplace, and they've been looking for roles. There's a LinkedIn report from a couple of months ago showing that for people who are looking for jobs in the market right now, more than 50% were looking for at least 6 months. So you have people in the market experience looking for a longer period in time for roles. Now, these people also have their networks because they've had experience, they built relationships. So in this tough market, where a lot of applications are being written through AI, where a lot of applications being reviewed by AI as well, which I'm completely against, there you have the only way to stand out is through referrals. So naturally, in this market where a lot of experienced talent, who also, by the way, is willing to come in at a lower level and a cheaper level right now, not all of them, but majority are. If they are, it's going to be very difficult for a young talent to compete there. I saw this. I was hiring during the last recession in 2008, 2009, the financial crisis. And I was in a smaller company. And the way I could grow that company was because we could afford talent that we could not have normally. So that's already happening. That is why young people are not getting jobs when markets start to shrink, right? Because of macroeconomics, and companies start to think about, okay, let's consolidate. There were a lot of roles in that high growth period that companies, were nice to have. And as they think about shrinkage, they want to consolidate roles. So there are a lot of roles that were going to be consolidated anyways. You had experienced talent available in the market. On top of it, you have this AI guilt being thrown around by companies. Remember, a lot of the big tech players are also sellers of AI. So they do need people to buy into this AI productivity, low-hanging fruits, so that they can sell more AI as well, which I'll show shortly that that's not really going well. You are going to not have jobs for young people, for early in career and talent. So that is what's happening. And because of that, I'll do the counter argument. Before I get to the counter argument, there's a similar report by Harvard. And in that Harvard report, this is called Generative AI as a Seniority Biased Technological Change. Came in August as well. And they looked at similarly what they looked at for companies that were adopting AI versus those who were not. They found that those who were adopting AI, there was basically shrinkage for the early in career talent. And this is one of the charts that is being shared around social media. You may have seen this. This is what they're seeing, that there's a major difference between juniors versus senior employees. Interestingly, also mentioned something else, that the biggest impact they're seeing is in wholesale and retail. Very interesting. I wonder what could have been happening in wholesale and retail, says the ex-supply chain guy in a previous slide. So let's compare these two reports to what a think tank produced. That think tank is called it's called the Economic Innovation Group. I'll make sure you folks get to see it so that we can give them credit. And they produced a report earlier in August before Stanford and Harvard. And what they did, they also looked at AI exposure rules. And what they did was, so let's first do, this is important to see this chart, AI exposure from 1 to 5, 5 meaning highly exposed. They looked at over the last couple of years and they saw that the unemployment rate for those who were highly exposed actually did not change much. First of all, they said that there's nothing significant, like there's not a major trend between those who are highly exposed and least exposed, but even that there is a trend that the highly exposed have had lesser impact on their unemployment than the least exposed. And then on top of it, whatever that trend is, it's a very sort of non-significant, non-practically significant impact. They also saw something else. They said, okay, what about, they look at multiple charts, but I'll quickly shift to the age-based. Said, all right, what happened to recent graduates? Unemployment rate by export. Again, if you were in a highly exposed sort of like a discipline, you didn't have that high of an unemployment rate compared to others. So there's, this data, right, saying that, again, proving what I was saying earlier, that what we're seeing right now in the market are impacts of what was just happening before ChatGPT came in. So right now, yes, job market is really bad. Right now, what you're seeing is not because of AI, but AI is a convenient answer because of many, convoluted reasons. There's the AI media industry complex at play as well. On top of it, remember the Harvard report that said wholesale and retail, and the Stanford report saying that, there's a lot mainly because of automation. This is a McKinsey report, very popular report called the Gen AI paradox. What they found was that about 80% of the companies that have invested in AI, companies did not really find the value on their bottom line. It means that whatever they're putting in, they're not really seeing that adoption come through. And if they had, then it would have impacted on roles as well and on employees. So if that isn't really happening, what are we seeing that is AI automation right now that is taking jobs away? So again, it goes back to my earlier point. Those jobs were at risk anyways because of the macroeconomics. So then we also have, similarly, BCG, Boston Consulting Group, also showed that about 25% of the companies at max have some capability to look at AI in a very serious manner. And then the biggest issue of adoption is around people and processes. Is because there's not a clear use case around ROI. There's not a clear use case about cost savings. There's not a clear use case around, and then because of the fear of AI, there's been resistance to adopting AI. So adoption isn't really happening in companies, right? Which is consistent with what I've seen in my experience. Now, the job market is bad, right? And so when we look at it, remember the Harvard study that said wholesale and retail? I said, I wonder what happened. What is that? Let's go to our good old friend BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this is the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. They published their report right now. I know they're in hot water because people are questioning the data, but they are still the government source. I will also compare them to a private source shortly. But what you're seeing overall is wholesale and trade declining. You have manufacturing or anything around goods production declining. You also have the government declining. Wonder what's happening there. Get to that. As a private source in comparison to Bureau of Labor Statistics, I shout out to Revelio Labs. They've done great work in this debate around if the government data is accurate or not. They've started publishing their report, which is a public labor statistics report. It combines what's publicly available data as well as other data sources that they've been gathering over the years around employment. I think they're doing a really good job. Their numbers are different in magnitude to the government, but similar trend. So you see overall this decline in employment. And then you see again by sector as well, you see a similar story that we saw in BLS as well. Now, how do we make sense of this? Shout out to my friend Brian Elliott here. He runs this blog here. It's a very good company, Work Forward as well, around future work, looking at remote, hybrid, and then also what's happening with the job market. I think he did some of the best analysis there. So shout out to him because I'm going to use directly some of his sources. What's the reason for these job cuts? He referenced this report and created this chart from Challenger and Gray. They're an outplacement services company that produces report every month around what's happening for layoffs that outplacement services industry is looking at. Drum roll, please. The biggest factor is DOGE related, Department of Government Efficiency. Remember, you saw this in the BLS data and then the Revelio Labs data. It is government related. All right. Next in line is bankruptcy, restructuring. Again, that's signaled with macroeconomics, uncertainty. Then there are the tariffs. This is why when we looked at wholesale and retail, my light bulb came up because that's what happens. Supply chains get impacted. They're already impacted with tariffs. You're seeing that impact in the government data around labor statistics as well on wholesale, retail. Guess where tech and AI is? Guess where cost cutting? It is mostly uncertainty, tariffs, and government. Remember, US government is the biggest buyer for anything. So when you make these cuts, it has ripple effects. That is where bulk of the issues are coming in. It is not because of AI. Then think about uncertainty. So actually, before we get into uncertainty, good thing Brian looked at as well. This is Signal Fire. They've done one of the best analysis on tech. So if the argument is, well, but in tech, there's, Salesforce just announced 4,000 people laid off, and they said, hey, that's because we don't need customer service people. Because remember, they want to sell AI for customer service, which is not true. If you dig into it, it's not really all customer service people. I don't really buy it. And this report also shows that based on the current engineering is the most expensive talent in tech, engineering headcount, and the engineering talent growth over the last 12 months. It's been pretty stable. It's been pretty stable. So, they're not really, reducing their hiring. So what's really happening is they are really taking their jobs away. Here's a very interesting chart. This is from Bloomberg and BCG. Now, for anyone looking for sources, this is, if you go to Bloomberg, search the CEO radar. They have this quarterly report where they analyze what CEOs and analysts are saying in their quarterly reports to get an idea, to get signals of what are they talking about. So I'll go back to Brian's report so that we give him due credit. So the mentioning of uncertainty, right? Look at this. This is around the pandemic. Discussion on uncertainty had this peak, then it came down, and then remember again, before ChatGPT, you already had this rise of uncertainty being mentioned everywhere. Executives were getting the market ready that they're going to do layoffs, that they're going to talk about productivity and remote work and bring people back into the office, blah, blah, blah. Austerity measures, buckle up, do more with less, right? The whole shebang. And then stabilize, came down, and then look at this peak right now. It is higher than the pandemic. You all remember the pandemic? Half a decade ago, higher than the pandemic. So right now, the layoffs that you're seeing, the job market issues you're seeing have more to do around uncertainty and more to do around what was already in the works. There is more to do around consolidation. And then now this abundant of supply of experienced talent in the market. It is war, politics, economics. Now, does that mean that we should just turn our eyes away and say, AI, it's not impacting? Not really. The issue is because this hype has been created on AI. And the McKinsey report is also, by the way, a very good example that companies are investing in AI. So if they're investing in AI, they are going to buy into this because you're going to try to look for what's the low-hanging fruit for us to get out of the situation. I think this is a very alarming chart that Axios produced using BLS data. And it is, looking at US manufacturing employment over the years. And, when you look at two recessionary periods, it takes a dip and then it doesn't really recover from it. And the 2000s, then you have the 2008 to 2009, then in the pandemic, it started to rise and now it's again going back. It doesn't really recover. And what you get is that chilling picture that there is permanent job losses there. So if there is already job losses happening in the knowledge worker space, this is what happened to manufacturing could happen in knowledge worker space, and this push on AI by these big players and this media industry complex with AI as well. There is going to be momentum and inertia behind this, which means that it may not be happening right now, but these reports, this halo effect itself is a canary in the coal mine for what's to come and why we need to buckle up. All right. With that, I want to touch another analysis. This is from Tom Ormsby, and shout out to Ellie Court who shared this with me. Earlier in the year, they did this good analysis as well, and two key reference points. the World Economic Forum produces the Future of Jobs report. In 2025, when they produce that, they reduce their estimates of how much of AI is going to be a job killer from prior years. So they've sort of also, revised their estimates as well. Just because AI is a job killer is not necessarily true, but it is going to be pushed to become that. And then there's a BCG survey that they refer that 75% of the companies are struggling to scale AI and generate any value from it. So now they're not generating value right now, but they are going to be thinking about this. All right, so back to this. It's a mixed bag. What you're seeing right now in the news, the report is not necessarily valid, but the signals are there that this myth is going to be forced to be turned into a reality. You do need to pay attention. But right now, people saying that something happened to entry level because of AI, and then for mid-career safe, not really. We know in tech, is ageism happening. People are afraid. People have been losing their jobs. So what do we do about this? Remember, going back to the three questions: should I, could I, would I? So on the should I, what have we validated? We have found is that while the losses that we see right now may not be because of AI, so we're safe. What all that means is that we have time. What it doesn't mean is that we're not going to get there because of what I just explained. There is this whole machinery, and the entire energy for everyone is going to be around make it happen. So we have time, no crystal ball. I don't have a crystal ball, only have this round head. What do we do about this? So that's what I'm going to cover. And I think where we move beyond this media hype and all this news and fear mongering, because it does get intimidating, it gets overwhelming. There's tons of tools out there as well. And you're like, okay, I'm not even going to bother about this. So I think if you want to figure out what the impact is going to be for you, that is where we step back. And I think we take a structured approach. We look at a framework for how we can assess the impact for us, and also look at what's available data out there, but take it with a grain of salt and apply a framework for what does it mean for my domain. That is going to be the could I. And then what action does that mean for me based on that framework? That's part of the could I. And then how do I go about this? What do I do about this? How can I approach there? What is my strategy? What is my choice? That's a would I that we're going to cover in coming videos. So give a teaser around could I, what we will be looking at. So we remember this framework, augmentation versus automation. We're going to look at this and think about, okay, what does that mean for different roles? And then what we look in the could I is applying that framework for different roles, and then also figuring out, okay, what are the factors that define how vulnerable am I to AI? With that, this is the end of the first video. If you like anything, please comment, right? Of course, like and subscribe, because that's the only signal I know that I'm doing a good job and should I be producing more of these. And then if there are any specific areas where you want to go into detail around to showcase how we run this and how we solve this, I'll leave that in the comments. Thank you and goodbye.